comes to traffic, and I've talked about Charlotte traffic. I told you guys at some point I will stop talking about Charlotte traffic. I'm just not there yet. I'm still healing from living in Charlotte for a number of years. Now, there's a few particular things about traffic that really drive me crazy. This is a true story. A few weeks ago, Molly and I are driving down Westinghouse Boulevard in South Charlotte and pull up beside this girl. It doesn't matter if it's a girl or a guy driving the car, okay? This girl is driving down the road. She's holding an ice cream cone in one hand, and she's holding her phone in the other, texting. What's she using to drive the car? So I blow my horn, and I'm like, do you understand how dangerous this is? So I felt it necessary, to do that. There's something else when it comes to traffic that irritates me, okay? That sometimes makes me angry, and some of you guys may agree, and some of you guys are just going to be completely oblivious, and I hope that you'll hear this with love, okay? Somewhere in driver's ed, you were taught that slower traffic on the interstate is supposed to keep what?
Right.
On the right side. How many of you guys driving down the road in the left lane, somebody is just hanging out in the left lane? Oh yeah. See, here's one that gets us right. So, traffic is something that can make us angry. Now, let me go to our next one. This is one that all of you can identify with. We've had some issues with this week. We're trying to set up new service because we just moved to Salisbury and we're talking to people on the phone. Not necessarily people on the phone, because with customer service, you've got these automated systems, right? And if you've got noise in the background, then it just completely messes the system up. It doesn't know what you're commanding the system to do, like the numbers and things of that nature. But here's the other thing that really drives us crazy sometimes and makes us angry, is when you're talking to somebody, and this, listen, if English isn't your first language, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. But when you're a communicator and you can't understand the person on the phone, and then they tell you that their name is Bob or Betty, and you know that people in that particular culture don't have names, Bob or Betty. You talk about something that can sometimes frustrate us and anger us. Customer support. Customer no support is what I like to call it. And then here's the last one. This drives my dad crazy. Long lines. In fact, some of you guys determine where you will eat based on how short the line is, right? Now, my dad absolutely drives me crazy. Imagine walking into Walmart. You've got 30 lanes, and there's 4 lanes open, right? Mm-hmm. And that's typically what happens. In fact, I think this is a picture of Walmart. There's all sorts of things that can make us angry. Now, I want you to think about this. Think about your reaction, your response to some of the things that make you angry. And if you're like me, your reaction and your response to the things that make you angry probably aren't your best moments in life. Would you agree with me? In fact, just imagine if somebody were following you around with a video camera and they were capturing all these moments on film where you react and respond to some of your anger. I'm driving down 85 several weeks ago, and this guy is beating his steering wheel, viciously, because he's so angry. We're sitting in traffic, and you can tell he was trying to get somewhere, and everybody around him was just making him angry. And if I had a video camera, that would have been a great YouTube video. We have to be careful, right? Because oftentimes, being angry and our response to anger is not our best moments. And if you're like me, there's plenty of those moments in life, right? Where you look back and you're ashamed of your response. The people closest to you, they know. If people around you knew how you sometimes responded out of anger, you wonder if they would even have anything to do with you. I want to tell you that, as your pastor, anger is something that I have dealt with for a number of years. And there's plenty of moments in my life that I would love to go back and erase because of my response to anger. Now, there are a couple of things about anger I want to start with. There's good news about anger, and then there's bad news about anger. The good news is this. Anger is not wrong. Did you know that? Anger is not wrong. In fact, for some of us, maybe you've heard somebody say before, what's wrong with you in the middle of your anger? And I take great comfort in knowing that anger is a perfectly normal response to moments and situations in life where you feel like you've been hurt, where you feel like that you're being harmed, or maybe somebody that you love or somebody you care about is being hurt or harmed. Because it is this instinct to draw back and to resist being hurt anymore. You will not hurt me, right? And so anger is a perfectly normal response. And we see this actually in the Bible. The first part of Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26 says this. This is actually a quote from Psalm 4:4. We've been looking at the Psalms the last couple of weeks. We'll be going there in just a few few minutes. In your anger, do not sin. In your anger, do not sin. Now think about what this verse is saying and what it's not saying. Is it saying that anger is a sin? Is it saying that anger is a sin? No. No, the expectation is, listen, it's as part of your reaction to situations in life where you have been hurt. Anger is an expected response. The command is to do not do what? Do not sin. In your anger, do not sin. And so essentially, when you look at this, here at Highrock, one of the things that we believe, and we follow are the teachings and the ways of Jesus. And, whether or not you believe in this Jesus that we talk about and proclaim on a weekly basis, one of the things that I take tremendous comfort and encouragement in is to see that often in Jesus' life, Jesus became angry. In fact, there's a passage that we'll put up here on the screen. Mark chapter 11, verses 15 through 17. This is also in your celebration guide. Mark 11 says that, and this account is recorded several times in Scripture. In fact, often when you look at the New Testament Scriptures and follow the life of Jesus, there are several situations where you can see that Jesus becomes angry. Mark 11 is one of those accounts, verse 15. Jesus entered the temple and began to drive out the people buying and selling animals for sacrifices. He knocked over the tables of the money changers and the chairs of those selling doves. And he stopped everyone from using the temple as a marketplace. Because here's the thing. Here's one of the things that angers Jesus. Anything that stands in the way of you and me and anyone else having access to God. And that's exactly what was going on here in this particular situation. Verse 17, he said to them, the Scriptures declare, my temple will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have turned it into a den of thieves. And so Jesus becomes angry. Now, this isn't an excuse for you to go home and start flipping over tables, okay? But this is a premeditated act of Jesus to basically make a point and to tell and to show the people that anything that stands in the way of God, anything that stands in the way of the freedom, the life, and the peace that God intends for us to have, angers the heart of God. Now, this is a very different Jesus than oftentimes than what we picture, or the pictures that are portrayed of Jesus around us, where, if you watch a movie, a Jesus film, where Jesus has long, flowy, well-groomed hair with no split ends, and he's got a long white robe, not stained at all, with a pretty purple pageant sash across it, some rainbow sandals. I mean, this is a very different Jesus than that. In fact, if you go back and read your Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the first 4 books of the New Testament, what you'll find is this Jesus who is essentially a man's man, who often becomes angry with anything and everything that stands in the way of the freedom and the life and the peace that God desires for us to have. In fact, oftentimes Jesus becomes angry with many of the religious establishments of the day. And so Jesus becomes angry. Here's the thing that we see in Jesus' anger. Jesus' anger is probably best described as a righteous anger, right? It's an anger that moves us toward action. Last week we talked about the injustices in the world. We talked about people who struggled with despair and a sense of hopelessness. And, God is a God of hope, and people who are without hope, in some cases, feel like God is distant, and how God desires to use us to be messengers of hope. But oftentimes it's this righteous anger that moves us to take action. And I believe that God has set something within all of us to fight for the things in life that are good, to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves, and to be a voice for people who have no voice of their own. You see, there is a righteous anger, and that's what Jesus displays. In fact, let me just say this, that I believe that there are things that anger God when it comes to hurts in your life, hurts that you and I have experienced. There may be some of us here tonight, maybe growing up, you didn't get the attention, you didn't get the affection, you didn't get the love that you felt like was due to you as a child, because either one or both parents stepped out on you, or they were present, but they weren't involved or engaged in your life. And so you've been walking around with this hurt and this anger that has developed into an anger. And I believe that's something that actually angers the heart of God. There may be some of us here tonight, maybe you've struggled with abuse and neglect in your life. And and over the years it's developed into this hurt that's transitioned into an anger. I believe that those are things that anger the heart of God. And I want you to know that your anger as a result of your hurt is certainly justified. The question is, what do you do with your anger? See, that's the good part of anger. The bad part of anger, and the bad news here is what we sometimes choose to do with our anger, right? Because sometimes when it comes to anger, if we don't deal with our anger properly, and if we allow our anger to persist without doing something about it, then it can lead to some regrettable and destructive situations. Of course, there are plenty of other things in life that anger. Sometimes some things are big things, and some things are small things. When you think about the things in the world that really matter, the things that anger the heart of God, like we talked about last week, things like human trafficking around the world. You think about those things, and then think about some of the things, the day-to-day things that anger us, like getting stuck at a stoplight, at one stoplight in Salisbury, which I'm like, somebody asked me tonight, how are you doing with traffic in Salisbury? I'm like, there is no traffic in Salisbury. I have had nothing to be angry about. Think about some of the things that we get angry about, that